Throughout history, people who committed crimes, and even those merely accused of wrongdoing, faced unimaginably cruel punishments. Here we delve into 10 of the most brutal methods of punishment from the annals of history. Starting with number 10, rat torture. Using rats as instruments of torture or execution has been a gruesome practice throughout history. In this method, known as the rat trap, a rat would be confined within a cage with no bottom. Placed on the victim's body, typically the torso, the cage would then be heated on one side. The trapped rat, seeking escape from the heat, would gnaw through the victim's flesh in its desperation to find a way out. This cruel and agonizing ordeal inflicted unimaginable suffering on the victim as the rodent burrowed into their body. Coming next, number 9, the Brazen bull, also known as the Sicilian bull, was an invention of the ancient Greeks, believed to have been created in Sicily. This diabolical contraption was constructed entirely of bronze, resembling the form and size of a real bull. The condemned individual would be placed inside the bull and a fire would be ignited beneath it, heating the bronze until the person inside was slowly roasted to death. As if the agonizing death by heat weren't horrifying enough, the bull also had mechanisms that transformed the screams of the victims into sounds resembling the bellowing of a bull, adding a chilling element of cruelty to this barbaric method of execution. Next up, we have number 8. Flaying or skinning was a gruesome punishment where humans, rather than animals, were stripped of their skin while still alive. This barbaric practice, prevalent in ancient times, inflicted unimaginable pain on its victims. Depending on the extent of the skin removed, some would succumb to their injuries, while others survived but endured a lifetime of physical and psychological trauma. Flaying was particularly notorious in Mesopotamia, where it was used as a form of punishment. Similarly, individuals were punished by having pieces of flesh forcibly removed from their bodies, a cruel reality that echoes the demands made by Shylock in Shakespeare's The Merchant of Venice. On number 7, we have the breaking wheel, which was a grim method of capital punishment used in the past. The condemned person would be fastened to a wheel, sometimes equipped with spikes, and then subjected to brutal beatings with a club or a cudgel. As the wheel turned, the force would shatter the bones in their body, causing unimaginable agony and ultimately resulting in death. This cruel and barbaric practice inflicted excruciating suffering on its victims, making it one of the most horrifying forms of execution in history. Moving on to number 6, we have another form of the most extreme punishment, impalement, a gruesome form of punishment that was distressingly common during the Middle Ages, particularly for those accused of treason or crimes against the state. Victims would be impaled by a pike, pole, spear, hook, or stake, leading to an agonizing death. Various devices were invented to carry out this brutal method of execution, with different orifices of the body targeted for different crimes. Regardless of the specific method, all impalements resulted in excruciating suffering for the condemned, underscoring the brutal nature of justice during that era. And now we have number 5, crushed under an elephant. Crushed under an elephant, back in ancient India and other parts of Southeast Asia, was a way they dealt with criminals, which involved having their heads crushed under an elephant's foot. Yeah, it sounds brutal, and it was. They'd make a whole public show of it too. Elephants were trained to either kill the person right away or torture them slowly, and get this, sometimes they wouldn't even finish the job. They just left the person all torn up. It's pretty crazy to think about, right? But that's how things were back then. Now, if you thought things couldn't get any more brutal, buckle up for number 4, being raped by wild animals to death. Yeah, it's as horrific as it sounds. Back in the ancient Roman Empire, they knew about the spectacle, and nothing was more shocking than watching wild animals tear someone apart. And if the victim happened to be a woman, they'd even go as far as training the animals to assault her until she died, like the tragic fate of poor Locusta. It's disturbing stuff, but it's important to know how brutal things could get back then. Number 3 on our list is the gruesome act of being sawed in half. Yep, you heard that right. This was a method of capital punishment used in various parts of the world, from the Roman Empire to Spain and parts of Asia. Another equally horrifying form of punishment was disembowelment, where a person's organs would be removed while they were still alive, slowly leading to their death. It's hard to fathom the level of cruelty humanity was capable of in the past. These barbaric practices serve as a stark reminder of the brutality that characterized certain periods of history. As for recorded accounts of death by sawing detail, various methods were employed. During the reign of the Roman Emperor Caligula, reports suggested sawing transversely through the middle, akin to the ancient Chinese practice of waist chopping. Conversely, in Moroccan cases, sawing occurred lengthwise from the groin upwards and from the skull downwards, known as mid-sagittal sawing. In a singular stance involving Simon the Zealot, the individual was hanged upside down and sawn apart vertically from the groin, with no mention of additional support structures. In cases providing more explicit details, the condemned person was typically fastened to 1 or 2 boards before the sawing commenced. Number 2. Death by boiling people. In ancient times, humanity demonstrated a gruesome fascination with a macabre, often utilizing barbaric methods of execution to punish criminals. Among these, the practice of boiling individuals alive in oil or water stood out, albeit less popular than other forms of execution due to its lack of direct bloodshed. Nevertheless, the horrific spectacle garnered an audience across Europe and Asia. In England, boiling alive as a means of execution was rare, particularly during the reign of King Henry VIII. However, an exception arose in 1531 when it became the prescribed punishment for murder committed by poisoning, categorized as high treason. This decree followed a chilling incident involving Richard Roos, the Bishop of Rochester's cook, who served poisoned porridge, resulting in 2 deaths. Roos's partial confession under torture led to his execution by boiling alive at Smithfield on April 15, 1532, eliciting visceral reactions from spectators. This gruesome method was employed again in 1542 for Margaret Davy, also convicted of poisoning. However, during the reign of Edward VI in 1547, the 1531 Act was repealed, signaling a shift away from such brutal forms of punishment. Scotland too has a dark history of boiling individuals to death. In 1222, amidst tensions over tithes, the Bishop of Caithness and a monk named Serlo were reportedly boiled alive by enraged farmers with the consent of John Haraldson, the bloody Earl of Orkney. King Alexander II retaliated fiercely, executing numerous individuals implicated in the crime. However, conflicting accounts suggest that Adam of Melrose, one of the victims, was burned alive instead of boiled. Despite discrepancies, these harrowing tales underscore the brutality of medieval justice and horrors endured by its victims. Number 1 on our list takes us to the ghastly world of torture with the infamous rack. This diabolical contraption, consisting of a wooden frame, was a favored tool of inflicting agony upon the condemned. The victim's limbs would be tightly bound to 4 corners of the frame with chains. Through the manipulation of pulleys and rollers, the body would be gradually stretched to its limits, causing excruciating pain. The primary purpose of the rack was to extract confessions or information from the unfortunate individual subjected to its torment. Under the relentless strain, the victims' joints would be dislocated, muscles torn and bones broken. Many endured unimaginable suffering, often succumbing to their injuries or being rendered permanently disabled. The rack symbolizes the barbarity of medieval justice, where cruelty knew no bounds in the pursuit of punishment and control. Its chilling legacy serves as a stark reminder of humanity's capacity for brutality and the enduring horrors of the past. What's your take on these historical methods of punishment and torture? Let us know in the comments what other topics you'd like us to cover in the future. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you at the next one.